pavilion being with an R panel with that ribbed kind of metal. Still looks very, very nice. But we wanted to look at detailed railings, the cupola, just to give that kind of look. And so these are different options that we have. Wood to metal. So we're in that 30 to almost 3 times as much to do something that would be metal or vinyl clad from a wood type structure.
What size are we looking at?
They're roughly 20 by 20, somewhere in that range. 20-foot diameter. So probably this is probably what, about 20 feet here, maybe a little bit more.
Have you considered using cedar? Because I've seen a lot of them made out of cedar, which has a pretty good.
Yeah, I think this might. This doesn't look like cedar, but yeah, I mean cedar. Cedar and the treated pine or cypress tends to last a little bit longer. It doesn't warp. The cedar doesn't have as much structural capabilities. And if you've ever seen cedar versus a treated pine or cypress, when it ages, if you don't keep the stain, it look the same.
Okay.
So it probably would depend on the cost differences. I like to use cypress. It's a little bit more expensive than the cedar. I'm not 100% sure on what this is, but this is a manufacturer that we talked about for a product here to be able to put in the Houston Gulf Coast area. But anything you put wood, you're going to have to seal it probably every 3 or 4 years just to keep that wood from drying out and starting to split.
I think leaning towards longevity, in my opinion, is the best option for us. It's our not our first park, but it's the first park right here next to City Hall. So I think, in my opinion, we need to think long term. Yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more up front. It's going to hurt a little bit more, but in the long run, I think we'll be thankful, because if we wait, prices are just going to keep going up, obviously.
I agree, Brian. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's our duty almost to get this thing to last as long as it.
Yeah, exactly.
Maintenance wise too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was.
Yeah, I mean, the metal's going to be the best choice.
Yeah.
And you can still get a really nice classical looking styling with metal. And there's still some options even with this.
Is there something more traditional looking than?
They do have some that have.
It looks like you're at the beach with something like that. Is
Yeah,
there
it does
a
look very
classical
beachy,
style?
doesn't it?
Yeah.
A classical style like the first or second one that would be metal.
And do we want to kind of keep the same theme of our pavilion and
I would like to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to make.
Yeah.
kind of-
For it to kind of match and flow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits if you use, I think Classic Rec was the previous one, but we've used Classic Rec. But there are some other, I don't know what you call it, where it has the framing kind of supports. I don't know what that, but there are some other options to give it. So the choice would be metal, but a little less beachy looking, a little bit something more complementary to.
Right.
Something more
Okay.
complementary to the pavilion itself.
Okay. That'll give me some direction. I can get something specific from the vendor. Okay, playgrounds. This is probably the harder part. So I've come up with 3 different stylings and manufacturers that I have worked with. This first one, I'm talking about more of something that's got a little bit more of a nature-themed styling. I'm not suggesting wood, but something that's got more of an earthy tone, texture, boulders, climbing. This is an example of a 2 to 5 structure, 5 to 12. So obviously 2 to 5 would be younger kids, so that tends to be smaller structures. This is kind of an example of what that would look like. All of these playgrounds, installed costs, anywhere from 150 to 200,000 for a play structure for a 5 to 12, somewhere in that 50 to 75 for a 2 to 5. So you're looking at somewhere around 250 to 300,000 for a big enough playground. Certainly you can do less. I've done more than this, but these are generally in the range. This one is kind of at the higher end, at like that 270 to 280.
Sensory?
Huh?
Is it for sensory kids too?
These would be accessible. I wouldn't call these necessarily playground for all abilities. There are different elements in here that are tactile and audio sensory in terms of making sound or doing movement. Those are things that we can look at.
What about disabilities? disabilities?
Yeah, these would all have accessible platforms and being able to get on it. We've done accessible playgrounds that have more ramps associated with them, or have more ground level components, but that's something that we have to have a certain amount of ground level components to meet our American Society of Testing Materials and our CPSC and TDR. We have to have, I think, half of the structures have to be accessible from ground level for kids that that can't quite get up to the higher levels. But this is more of a traditional, it's a thematic take on a traditional platform and post type structure.
Does the quote include the surface material?
No.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. I was doing some looking on the internet. There are some like frontier town makeups, and maybe we can do a little bit of that. There's a train out there. I've got some stuff that I printed out that I got some of that too, the nature stuff. But I did kind of dive into the Western feel and a train station feel. Could you possibly think along those lines also with the nature stuff?
Yes. And actually, one of the ones that I'm going to show, I'm going to jump to this one. So this is one manufacturer. They actually do have a train-themed style, but this is something that, so the top one is a 2 to 5 type, more creative play. It's little houses, it's fire trucks. They do have train. This is a high-density plastic material. I have a lot of experience with this because it's in my hometown, and my 2- and 4-year-old grandkids love this. So this is why this is in here, because it's been tested by my grandkids. But it's more of an interactive play, and then a more dynamic opportunity for climbing and interaction. So we try to do as much as we can to get what I call non-linear play, where kids can get onto it at different points. They can climb as much as they want. These are not structures. There's some theory, and some people like the idea of towers, higher elevated kind of elements. Kids like to have a sense of, I'm not sure about that. So, kind of risk reward, but it's in a safe environment. So there are some different things that are more thematic that could go vertical. Most municipalities I work with don't like to go super high. I've done kind of a rope totem pole kind of thing that's been 30 feet high, and some people like that. I have some clients that I can't go higher than 12 feet with a climber. So this is one opportunity to do something more thematic, but certainly there's so many options out there. If you're interested in something that would be more of a rail theme or thematic, there is a lot of opportunities and options for that.
The one up in the corner, I can't really see it too. Is that like a outpost kind of looking thing, or?
Yeah, so it's a fire engine with a firehouse. It's got the
Okay.
little dog, little dog house, and but it has. You can see it a little bit better here. So you can interconnect these, and it still has slides. Still has ways for kids to get up. Now this is not for more. My 4-year-old grandkid would be all over the big one. But he will go through this, and so we want slides, you want things, things like that. We want climbing, things where they can, maybe the first time out they can be challenged. The next time out they're a little bit more comfortable. They can do something a little bit more.
Okay.
So this is more. So we're talking more about the thematic. So the cost goes up.
Right.
So we're at the close to the 300,000.
So we need one we can afford and one that we dream about.
So here's another one. Here's your little train. I think they may have some other ones that are a little bit nicer than this, but you can get train theme in 2 to 5 playground. This is we threw this one in here because one of the things that we're seeing a lot is, especially with my municipal clients, integral shade. It's very expensive to try to put shade over the entire playground, but it's a lot more affordable when you already have the posts for the structure to put an integral shade into it. So this had a really nice way of integrating that. And once again, there's your little bit of your, I think this other manufacturer has a little bit nicer train environment. This is all metal with some plastics. This is more of a how do I explain it, but it's woven, it's melded into, the color is integral to the plastic. It's a very durable board. I mean, it would take quite a bit to try to vandalize that. I mean, certainly you could spray paint it, but it's very, very, very durable. So these are kind of the three options. One that's more nature-oriented versus a little bit more thematic, something that's got a little bit more traditional. Here's that structure I was talking about where it has more vertical elements with the higher platform area. Part of the reason we didn't show something that was very tall, because we don't have a huge amount of space. So as soon as you go higher, the structures tend to be bigger, the slide exits are a lot bigger, so you need a lot more room.
Yeah.
So these are kind of images of the 2 to 5, and let me show you the next part of it, and then we can kind of swing back and talk about direction. Sorry, we had 4. So here's one that's very, very non-traditional. So if you notice, it doesn't have as many platforms. It has a lot of aggressive climbing opportunities. There's been so much research out there on playgrounds over the last 5 to 10 years about if you've got you get a variety of options for climbing for different age groups, then you can engage at certain levels. They can get more comfortable as they grow older. Then they can, more dynamic climbing opportunities. And so here, this is a way of getting that. You still have your slides, things like that, but kids can interact this in a different way. These are our projects that we've done. Just a different look, a different way to interact.
Is there any swings anywhere? I haven't seen any yet.
It's usually like an.
It's integral to this element here. We don't have necessarily a standalone swing set, although that's something that we could add to it. Actually,
Be a cheap
yeah,
out.
actually, I was at a conference downtown, and it was one of the manufacturers was doing a test saying the swings, climbers, risk-reward, dynamic opportunities for climbing. But yeah, we should probably take a look at that. These have varying degrees of swings within the structure itself.
Are you wanting a more traditional swing type?
I think any kind of swings
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, every kid loves to swing.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
We need more space, of course, but maybe.
Yeah, the nice things about the bowl swingers is I'll see adults get in them.
Yeah.
Or take their kid and sit in it, whereas if, but we could look at maybe a combination of kind of the bowl platform, saucer
If
type.
you're going to do that, can you throw in the wheelchair one and just see how much it is, the wheelchair swing?
And I have done those where it's, I don't know how to explain it, but you literally, the wheelchair ramps up to it and the whole thing swings almost.
Yeah, that's, because I've seen one at Kitty Hawk.
Okay, yeah,
So, yeah.
I think in one of the imagery that I showed, we showed one from the park that we did.
I don't see a bunch of ramps on this stuff, though.
Yeah.
No, this is not, the accessible play components are going to be at the ground level. This doesn't have a lot of ramps up to the structures.
I don't know what y'all all think, but I think that's going to be an important thing seems to have been a point of contact, point of conversation.
Yeah.
that-
Yeah.
Accessible.
I want every
Accessible.
kid to
I know
have a
there's-
chance to
I know
play.
there's other options down the road to bring this in bigger parks that we're working on and planning, but at least something needs to be in this for the disabled to be able to get to them,
To get to a higher platform.
to get to any of this
Just to
stuff that,
enjoy.
instead of just sitting down there looking at their brother, sister, or friend do it, you know how that's going to be.
Yeah, and any of these, there are those options to be able to get to a higher platform. What these, at least the ones that are shown here, rely on transfer stations. So you can get a wheelchair up to it, you can dismount, and
I
then,
mean, I understand that it may not work for every piece
Yeah.
out there, but we need to at least have a couple of options.
okay, so we need swings, we need some ramps.
Accessibility,
Yeah,
yeah.
accessibility,
accessible.
and we want more of a
Western train.
Western train
Yeah.
theme. Okay.
The other thing I was going to add is with a lot of these newer, at least I'm speaking specifically, I live across the street from the park in our community and the pavilion and everything. But one of the problems that we're having currently is anything that's attached to it, like if a certain area is broken, I don't know, we had like a slide that was loose. We had to cut that part out. So kids would go up to the top and then have to turn right back around. And same thing with anything with springs in it. I think they have this thing where it's like a spring teeter-totter. That spring broke, and it's very expensive to fix. So just some things to I guess, keep in mind is when we're looking at these parks, if something were to mess up, we're going to have, I don't know, that bottom right corner, for example, looks very clumped up, but like if something were to mess up on there, can kids still get on there and use the other parts of it? Or is that going to prevent accessibility on that one slide, for example? Or, I don't know, a platformer I've seen at other parks where, they have the little bridge and a piece of the bridge, the screw gets loose and that falls out. So now you have a missing piece on the bridge. So just some things to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the spring riders. It's really hard. I know I'm showing you a lot of information. You can kind of see it down here. I like spinners as freestanding elements where you can actually get into it, or we've been pretty successful. Think of those bowl saucer spinners, but things that have movement to them as opposed to rocking back and forth. Because I'm not sure they're necessarily more or less durable, but I don't really see kids using them much. Kids like to be spun, or things where you can get the parent or a young adult or an older sibling to integrate with it. But I think these are all good.
Can we get some feedback on color? Because we've shown some that have more muted colorization, some that have very bright.
I think they said the earth tones earlier.
Earth tones, I think, would be
Earth tones is your
better.
preference? Okay.
What do y'all think? Earth
Well,
tones
that's what I like, but what are kids drawn to?
Yeah. Maybe,
Kids like
It's
color.
like the bright,
maybe the covers be brighter or something,
your
but
your integrated shades.
yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of sort of sessions with kids, and I've never had a kid not like anything I showed them.
Yeah. I like
And
parks.
that's what
so
this part of the
we might
park
as well
is
do
for.
something.
Yeah.
If we want to take this theme, this railroad sort of early Manvel kind of vibe, let's take that, because they're going to play with whatever we get. But I think the things about ramps, the thematic, those are good takeaways, and we can focus on the vendor that gives us that best kind of look that we can move forward with it. There's so many different options out there, and most of these manufacturers, if I say I want to do this, let's do this, then But I think we can make that happen. The third element I wanted just to throw out there, that idea of a dynamic climber. That's where you start engaging kind of the preteen, even adults. But that idea that, think of like my 2-year-old grandson would be up here playing on this, even though he probably couldn't climb. I'd probably have to drag him off. But the older kid could go up higher. So those things where there's that gradated ability to get to different heights. These are anywhere from 25,000 to 60, 70,000, but that's just another way. Not that we can't put these into
You can just
the
like
structure,
add on, right?
as
Like
the
an
self. But
add-on.
Would this take up the
just an idea.
space between the 2 and 4, I think you said, and the older?
Yeah, 2 to 5, 5 to 12. This one, I've seen young kids on these, and these are all ones that we've done. I've seen young kids, and I've seen older kids, and I've seen adults.
But would this take away from anything we're already trying to do? We would have to like say, hey, we can't do the 2 to 5 because we're going to add one of these on here? Or like, do we have room to fit this in here?
There's still an interest and I think a logic to a 2 to 5 structure, because the scale tends to be smaller. So the slides, platforms, things tend to be kind of smaller. I don't think this necessarily takes the place of
Can
anything.
you go back and shoot the site plan, overall site plan, maybe that'll.
Yeah, you could, you could tuck one of these on your way to the dog
Yeah, I think we should have.
place for you to tuck that.
Yeah, it could be somewhere, it could, I'm
Can
kind of
fit it.
showing it.
Same
Oh,
with
okay,
swings, you
yeah.
know, where you need more space.
Yeah, I think every park in Houston that's noticeable has something similar. So I think we definitely need to include something like that.
So you get all this room right in there.
Yeah.
So is that something, so would it necessarily be here or would it be somewhere else?
Kind of expand the footprint like
Here.
to there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's still kind of room. This outline is roughly where the top of bank of the tension is. So there is, and this is pretty generously laid out. This isn't the final, this was just something we threw in there as a placeholder. So is the idea of that signature something at least to plan for?
Yeah.
I know I'm taking a lot of time here. I apologize. Is there anything within this sort of styling that catches your attention?
I like all the surface material, the harder rubber looking stuff, because I think maybe a wheelchair would be able to cruise up around the
Still
park.
play around, yeah.
Yeah, just a little more inclusive for those.
I do like, I've got two parks that are getting ready to go into construction, and we have engineered wood fiber for everything, but I talked the city into letting me do the port in place for this structure, just because you can get so many people interacting at different levels and different age groups. And it's not necessarily an issue. Sometimes you'll get migration of the wood fiber, you know, over into the structure, but we could take a look at how we could identify it. So I'm thinking maybe something, so like this structure here doesn't have necessarily as much lower level interaction. So would the idea be able to have something that a younger kid could involve themselves with or be able to pull up on?
I can't really see the blue one, but the green one looks like it would be, like you said, a good size level.
Yeah, and this is the middle size of this manufacturer. So they have one that's smaller and one that's even like,
Number 4 looks pretty interesting. I can't see what's,
Is it, do they
Yeah.
just kind of?
yeah, it basically, it's spiders. It's kind of a star shaped inside this. But this is one that's really good for younger kids to get up to and interact. And they come in different heights.
5 looks a little dangerous to me. I can just see King of the Hill, and then the
Yeah.
next kid is pushing him off. So I don't know. That's
a lot of head banging too.
my least favorite is 5 for sure.
Yeah, there is this,
You're just worried they're going to push you off.
yeah, so
Probably, yeah.
I actually wanted to go bigger, but the city wouldn't let me go higher than 10 feet.
Our city?
No, the city
Oh,
used to.
okay.
Because they were afraid. And I tried to explain to them that netting, the fall height isn't the top of it. You know, by the time a kid pulls back, there's netting upon netting. The research says that you're not going to fall to the ground. Like this option number 1, this manufacturer has one that's like 50 feet tall. I don't think I would ever do that because my grandkids would be at the top of the 50 and I'd have to go get them. But the research shows that they will not hit to the ground. They won't get there. But
I like option 3, or is it 3? Yeah, the top right, only because I think it gives shape, and it just gives something nice to look at when you pass by. I think it's going to catch the kids' eyes, and Mom and Dad, I want to go there. What's that? You know? And it seems to be a little
It's
bit cheaper than the others.
something that grabs your attention.
It looks like the footprint isn't that large either.
You can put it in a really small footprint. That space isn't a whole lot more than, you know, this diameter. It's probably, you know, in that size. But yeah, that one will go in a very small footprint.
And there's 3 different sizes.
Yeah, and there's other manufacturers that are different, but yeah, this is, so we're kind of leaning in this direction, something that would be a smaller,
What do you guys think?
I like option 3 as well.
Yeah.
Especially for what you get for the price and the space consideration.
it is the least expensive for, it's the most efficient cost-wise for what you get, and it is,
It looks fun.
Yeah.
You know?
and you'll get adults that'll get up there.
I was gonna say, we get to test it out, right? The first.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll
We
be
get the
up
first
there.
go.
I might have to go to
Inaugural.
urgent care afterward, but I'll be up there.
Well, next level, I recommend them. They're really good.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. I promise we're almost done. This isn't necessarily picking options, it's just showing some things that I would like to suggest for the park. This is the dog park. This isn't necessarily, our gated entrance is going to look something like that. Usually we have different entrance and exit because you don't want dogs that are going out with dogs going in, gives them that separation. So really nothing necessarily there. We have been successful with smaller features, tunnels, hoops, ramps, things like that, where the dogs can kind of move around and they can interact with their masters. But that doesn't necessarily, there's plenty of dog parks that don't have this. And there's just some of the things that we're proposing. Whatever we do, we'll have a water fountain that it's accessible, it'll normal height, and also for dogs to be able.
That's what that
this
blue
one-
thing
yeah.
is right there, right?
Yeah, this one here is a little bit more thematic. It's a fire hydrant. I don't know if dogs necessarily are attracted to fire hydrants per se, but.
The fire hydrant
anything
doesn't
that's
have
vertical.
an accessible, I guess, for like a human to use it, right?
This is just for dogs.
Not the way a dog does.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I put these in all the time.
Well-
This one actually has a water bottle fill station. These
Yeah.
are very popular because, I mean, it,
Talented dog that can do that.
Yeah.
and then also just having dog waste station. I've used this one quite a bit on projects. So this is the direction I'm thinking about. I don't think it needs to be overly programmed, but just, and we're also talking about some benches and other things.
What about
And
segregation for large and small dogs?
This is not big enough for that, but that's why we have that in and out kind of condition, so you don't get that. So if a dog's coming out, I have a dog living with me because my daughter's just is in between grad school and finding a job, and you don't want them mixing in a tight spot. They get very, very nervous. This is just not big enough to segment on that size. I know what you're talking about. I've seen, it's big enough that I think you're not going to have that problem. I've been to dog parks with my daughter's dog where you have small dogs and big dogs, and the smaller ones tend to generally stay out of the way, but I think this might be too small to try to do that, to segment it. And we have the situation where we have it as a detention. So anytime you put something in between as a divider within the detention area, that could cause some problems. So I'm not recommending that you divide it that way. And we tried to make it as nice as possible with that curvilinear stream, just so it doesn't look. Let me just show this. You can see it right here. There's a drainage, fairly shallow drainage ditch on this side, and then it picks up with that stone. We're showing like a small little bridge just to give it a little bit of some boulder, just to give it a little bit of thematic, and then it ties into the channel that goes to the outfall on both sides. The engineer was really good, and I said, I want to make this curvilinear with some stone. I don't want to just see a concrete, ugly-looking channel. So hopefully this will give it a little bit of,
We have one
little
next
flair.
door.
Yeah, I don't have any clients that like concrete pilot channels.
Cheap but not pretty.
That is it. I think I have talked enough. Any other comments, thoughts? I think we got some really good, I think we have enough to move on.
And I
Any other
think
thoughts?
what you showed us with the dog park, just a few elements and then the benches and stuff, I think that's going in the right direction too. And then the blue accessible water fountain for humans and animals. And I think that, it's actually, when I looked that up, I actually really liked that. I thought that was very handy.
I got two questions. One, what's the trail width?
I think it's 6 feet.
Okay. And then there was some discussion back before about parking for possible food trucks.
Yes. So where we're planning for that is in this zone right here. So that we're putting utilities for hookups for those in these two islands. So basically, we're assuming your food trucks could come in and be in this zone and kind of keep them out of the flow.
Okay.
What width are we looking at on the parking spots?
They're all city compliant 10-footers.
Okay, great. Is there going to be utility plugs closer to the, not the gazebo, but the shaded area further up in the park for vendors and things of that nature? Will there be
Like
more
up in here?
outlets there? Yes.
We currently do not. We have the in bed for future tent pavilions. We're planning for those, but we haven't put utilities there. Do you have something in mind that we should be planning for?
Some kind of plugs, because I know that we're going to be using that area for our market days, and it's getting pretty popular very quickly. So I think if we could provide them with power, that'd be great. But I know a lot of those people are prepared with generators, so I know cost is also an issue. So I would be willing to, whatever everybody else thought, I'm willing to go with that.
Would you want them to be sort of associated with both ends so they're staying within the structure of the pavilion, or do you want them out in this zone?
Out a little bit, I think.
Yeah,
'Cause that
if-
way, like you said, the tent, if you put the tents up, they'll have
It would be
possible-
more favorable to the vendors for sure if we could extend them out a little bit.
Nobody wants to listen to generators all the time.
Well, they
True,
make them
very
really
true.
quiet now. So I was next to one. I didn't even know they had a generator going. So, but yeah, I like that idea too about putting electricity out there for people that aren't under the pavilion.
Okay.
A question about the channel. Is that going to be difficult to maintain as far as keeping the weeds and stuff out of there?
It is only about 2 feet deep, and it's about 2 feet over 8 feet, 8 to 10 feet. So it's very, very shallow. And there was a
He's asking
reason.
about the detailing of it, they're keeping.
I'll bring my
weeds
goats,
going
don't
in.
worry.
John, this would just be mowable. It would be shallow enough slope-wise that you could get a mower through there. Maybe
Is it going to be porous where weeds will grow right through it?
it's just going to be turf.
Okay.
No, he's talking about the channel.
Oh, that's concrete with a seeded aggregate in it. So
Okay.
it's not loose gravel.
So it's-
We didn't want anything that was loose.
And mowers will be able to go right over that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be mortared in. It's not a like big loose boulder kind of thing. We're showing some boulders kind of up in here, but not in here. But yeah, mowers could go over that. Yeah, we didn't want any loose material.
Because the kids would take a piece of it, go up to that tower and throw it.
Yes. No matter what you do, if it's loose, it'll
They'll find something.
Either it'll end up in their mouth or
Or just
at
to see
somebody.
it drop.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Did we give you
Well
enough
done.
information?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think I misplaced my agenda. All right, next item on the agenda, item B, consideration and possible action to forward recommendations to City Council on proposed Dolores Martin Park Facilities Plan.
Hey, Bobby, quick question. I don't think we took actual formal action on the first one. We got input, but the agenda says consideration possible action.
So we need to vote on it.
Formal action on the take, or do you have enough to go on to come back with something that would require formal action?
Maybe the formal action could just be, we recommend moving forward to City Council with the recommendations discussed tonight or something like that.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote on that or just, okay. Can I get a motion to move forward with the recommendations to City Council that we discussed tonight?
I'll make a motion to move forward on the discussion tonight for the city park.
Can I get a second?
Discussion.
All in favor? All opposed? Nay?
You didn't vote.
No, I'm still trying to figure out
What kind of cost is involved?
moving forward on.
Oh,
that?
just the stuff we
Didn't-
just talked about.
Oh, that stuff, the past stuff, not Dolores Martin Park.
Not yet.
No.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah, absolutely. The vote is yes. Sorry.
Well, they're going to get prices for everything.
Well, but I mean, is there a base cost? Is there a budget to work within? I mean, they can come back and tell you whatever cost is involved. That still doesn't mean anything if you don't know what the budget is.
Well, I thought the last meeting you guys said we had about 100 and something
I mean,
K just to do the base and everything was going to be phased in?
right. I mean, the punchline is we don't have a budget for really any of it. So what we need to do is,
What we think is left over from the project.
exactly, yeah. So that's why we're going to have them as add alternates. So if something comes in, the concrete comes in less, or the roof of City Hall comes in less, or something like that, if there's any savings once we get the numbers in, then, oh, good, we can do number 1 and 2, or we can do the gazebo, we can do the, whatever it may be. Or, council can say, hey, well, at least now we have a real bid on it, and if we want to move money around so that we can do the whole thing, council will have that option as well. The first step was finding out, what do we want?
You know how much it's going to be?
Yep.
Maybe we talked about some fundraising too that filled some of the gaps. Sponsorship.
So just to confirm, so we were 6-0, unanimous?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, now we're ready to move on to the next item?
Yes, sir.
All right, consider,
A little confused what we're doing now. I mean, we're talking about the Dolores Martin Park now,
Now we're about to.
and you're talking about moving, giving the city council approval to go ahead and proceed with the consideration to do this. What's on this? Develop a budget, a park, or design, or what?
For the city park.
Yeah, the one we were just talking about.
Yeah, the City Hall
We're
part.
just saying, we approve all the things we talked about, the input we gave PGL, that's all we just voted on.
Okay.
And that
okay,
was
that's
just for
good.
the city park behind us.
Okay, that's fine.
We're moving on now to the Dolores.
Okay.
all right, consideration and possible action to forward recommendations to city council on proposed Dolores Martin Park facilities plan.
Okay, thank you so much. So the Dolores Martin Park, and Dolores Martin is actually here, which is pretty exciting. So
Yeah, when we introduce her, she's here.
this is the one that does not look anything like a park right now. It's an old sand pit that the city bought, and it's up on County Road. Oh, I thought we were going to show up there. County Road 58, right?
Yeah, Croy
In the city
Road.
limits,
Croy Road,
right?
yeah.
And if you've noticed, obviously there's lots of dump trucks going back and forth. There was a sand pit just to the east of it that was, a big pond, and BDD4 was working on filling in. There you go, thank you. Filling in part of that pit to basically reestablish some of the sides and everything. Well, they approached the city. Hey, do y'all need any material to help kind of fill in the edges of our sand pit, which we absolutely did, because it was dug exactly like you dig a sand pit, with vertical walls, and those, if it's sand, then they start creeping, and so we were quite frankly in danger of having to purchase some neighboring properties if we didn't do something. So if you were to look at Google Earth and just kind of go to the time lapse, what BDD4 has done for us over the last, I guess, 2 years is fantastic. The areas where it was really starting to creep. In fact, I don't know if I can show you, but this part way up at the top, that is actually what it looks like now, and it didn't. It was all water. The part that runs along County Road, what road is that, Jackie? 99?
It's,
90? 90.
It's 90, yeah.
The one that goes into the back way of Sedona Lakes. Yeah.
90.
Yeah, so that was the best example of what this pond was doing. It was really creeping. So that it's about I think about a 5-acre spot, and it's completely filled in now. So that's just an example. So we've been partnering with BDD4 on that. That's going well. Then, I don't know, a few months ago, we were approached by Brazoria County Commissioner's Office, Ryan Cade's office, about, is there a way that the county could potentially partner with the city to, there aren't any county parks in Manvel. Is there a spot? And we looked at this, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. Ryan came down and visited with us then. We just couldn't quite make anything work. But we resurrected this old sort of conceptual plan that was done in our master parks plan. If you feel like you've seen this before, you have. So it's in the master parks plan anyway. And the idea was that ultimately, if we could connect what is we're now calling the Dolores Martin Park to the Almost Heaven Park, if we could connect those two, what a world it would be, right? You'd have walking trails and all
Right.
kinds. Yeah, it would. So we've had a couple meetings with the county, and they're here tonight. And I apologize to the county. I didn't know that one was going to go for an hour. Otherwise, I would have rearranged y'all. But thank y'all so much for being here tonight. And I don't know if Brian, if now would be a good idea, or a good time for you to come up and just kind of tell the Parks Board, because you've seen the site directly and had a chance to visit with the consultants and whatnot, and basically ground truth that yes, there could be a real project here.
I have a quick question. How do you actually get to the park? Do you have to go back in through that sand pit to get to it, where the dump trucks are, or?
Right now, yeah. Don't
That's the
go out there
only way
now,
in right
for heaven's
now?
sakes. Yeah, yeah. It's gated off right now. There's no park right now. It's literally just an old sand pit that we are slowly converting.
Okay, because we were talking about that last week.
Yeah, don't go out there.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Brian Frazier, Brazoria County Parks Director. I've been out to the site a few times, have hiked it, walked it, fished it, took some staff with me there just to kind of explore. It does have potential, in my humble opinion. I think ultimately you're looking at the first hurdle is cost for development and access, which would be a sizable investment. If you're talking about facilities, from parking areas to boat ramps to playgrounds to restrooms to, things that would make it something for the public to have amenities at, trails. I think, again, you're talking about some significant dollars up front to get that to a spot. I mean, what the Drainage District has done has been good and interesting to watch happen as the footprint of dirt has gotten in around it, because there's a pretty tight corners on it from where the property boundary is to where the water was. It really wasn't passable. Like I said, a colleague of mine and I hiked it through there, and it's pretty rough going in some places, but I think once you get some of that land filled in and around it where you've got more of a footprint, that would make some sense. But the first hurdle would be cost. The second hurdle would be the operational management of it. Would it be a county park in Manvel? Would it be a city park that the county is some sort of role as a consult or as a, because you'd also be talking about, not just facility development, but equipment, maintenance, emptying trash cans, cleaning pavilions. You would have to have staff attention there. So you would have a management responsibility of that. And so we've had good, successful partnerships with Brazoria County with people like U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but it's been more of allowing each of those agencies to do what they do really well, which U.S. Fish and Wildlife is really, as they will tell you, they are resource rich and staff poor, and they are really good at identifying mission specific resources like land. And they're even pretty good at finding money to buy them, but they're not very good at getting them in the public arena. Brazoria County that's our wheelhouse. Hanson Park is a really good model for that, and someday if y'all want to get the economy tour, I can show you what we've done out there. But Hanson Park outside of West Columbia went from 82 acres to 567 because of that. And with miles of trail development that we have put in and made it, and we had a big grand opening ribbon cutting last week and a half ago. Anyway, so I don't know if I'm really addressing exactly what you had in mind, Dan, but I think, again, those are the conversations that need to happen. But the long and the short of it is water makes for great parks. The same reason that people gathered at places 1,000 years ago is the same reason people like to go to them today. Presence of water, abundant wildlife, pretty scenery. Those are constants. And you've got that in this thing. It's beautiful water, it's healthy water, it's got American pondweed and some really good ecosystems already with no management at all. And it's in good shape. So it's got what, like the old baseball term, they got what you can't teach. So it's got the good potential. It's just a matter of where would those dollars come from to develop them? Is there a phased idea for when that would happen, and then ultimately who would be the site steward of that and how that would work? But
And Brian, if I could just kind of connect the dots just for a minute. So one of the reasons that we brought this to the Parks Board first, so this project, this partnership with the county has not even gone to City Council yet. So this is sort of in its infant stages, but it was an idea the park itself was an idea in the Master Parks Plan. So what we asked Brian also to kind of look at is sort of ground truth. Those numbers were almost 10 years ago now, and it was, 2 million, 2.5 million, something like that. So he was able to do that and actually, I guess, visit with the same consultant.
yeah, in fact, I emailed Burdett again today when I found out this. Forgive me, I flew in today from being up in Oklahoma visiting my son in college and that sort of thing. So yeah, I kind of got word of that and put an email out to them to see about, what would be a next move to get at least some numbers together on design to get construction-ready plans and drawings out. What would that be? And I've sent them all this information. If you look up on your screen there, those are things that I thought might be nice to add if you're looking for development here, whether that's those squiggly lines or various trail loops, and then, a visitor center type office complex, some concrete parking surfaces, maybe even a boat ramp. You've got enough water that would make sense to have watercraft access. You probably wouldn't want, outboard engines racing across it, but you would probably want, electric motors or, kayaks and things. You've got
canoes.
You've got a good surface. If you put a bass boat on, you could do it with a trolling motor. You just wouldn't run your outboard engine. You can do that. There's numerous bodies of water that have restrictions such as that.
How many acres is that lake, approximately?
It's over 100, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
The lake
what
itself
it
is
will
about
be
80.
like when they finish the dirt footprint around it, I think you're probably talking about, I want to say, didn't we talk about 88 or 90 acres of surface acres of water? But it's also a former sand pit, so it sucker's got to be 30 feet deep.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And
super deep.
it's clear water. Like I said, it's a good resource. It's a healthy body of water. In just cursory, and I'm a big fisherman anyway, but just, I'm going to jump off the deep end, no pun intended. And I took my fishing rod and just in an hour or two caught some really nice fish. I didn't bring any photos of it, but I turned them loose. But there's good healthy fish in there right now.
What were in there?
I just fished for bass, and I was just pitching around grass, and I think I caught one almost 4 pounds and one 2 pounds. And then that connector that goes to that almost heaven, I caught a big fish out of there. That property has potential too, particularly if you link the two. But again, you can look at that property right now and see that the trail needs $200,000 worth of work because the barrier, the vegetative barrier cloth has come up through it, and it needs a new surface all over it. Right now, it's actually more of a hazard than it is anyway because when that trail cloth comes up, it'll actually be a trip hazard, and it doesn't meet any kind of ADA requirement. Anyway, I get in the weeds pretty quick, but if you look at that, that's just some suggestions that I had as far as if we were going to manage this, some facilities that we would consider putting in for a recreational, and this would be day use. Again, whoever decides that this is going to go, I think overnight camping is a fit for certain places and probably not others. I would humbly suggest that if you want to get into that, there's a whole nother discussion to be had, whether you're talking about RV sites or whatever. I would probably just on the surface, if I'm doing it, I'm recommending that this would probably be day use only with no campsites because you take on different challenges when you start adding overnight to it. Not the least of which is staff or volunteers or
Yeah, the
whatever.
liability.
Yeah. Well, your liability is inherent. Anyway, period. So.
And so, Brian, the sort of newer numbers, I guess current numbers are closer, in the $6 million range instead of, the $2 million or whatever.
Again, just wadding up paper
Right.
wads and throwing it to the wall, I would say you're probably looking at somewhere around that range to do a facility development like this from trails. piers, boat ramp, parking lot, playgrounds, restrooms, access points. You want probably multiple ones. Your trail alone would be, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it right. And I'm talking about with a crushed rock base and decomposed granite. I wouldn't recommend concrete. I think DG works really well. That's what we do on all of our trails. But, it would be a nice, like I said, I think it has a lot of potential. But again, there's conversations and questions about that investment.
We have identified some possible funding also through grant systems through Texas Parks and Wildlife and in different places though, correct?
Yeah, you'd probably look at somewhere around 2 to 3 million potential of that 6 million from grants. You can't get them typically all at once. You can get creative and overlap. You can get one and then use it as a match for another. But Texas Parks and Wildlife grants will cap out at certain amounts. You have your non-urban outdoor grants, you have trail grants, and you have boat ramp grants. Those are your 3 grants you're available with from Texas Parks and Wildlife through the state. And those are all pass-through dollars from the federal government. And they do those every 2 years. They'll lump sum those, and then they'll open up the grants for competition on those. And every grant.
If a partnership opens up between the city and the county and grants, is it we get grant money, you guys contribute and we contribute and everything comes together?
Yeah, I think we'd have to
Something
figure
like
that out, how that would work. But you score higher for grants the more skin in the game. So, 2 municipalities, going in with that, saying they're willing to back this in some way, or that they support it even, would help toward a grant. But you'd have to phase those in. You would have to say, like I said, what would you want to do first? You would want to get this amount done and these trails in place, or a boat ramp or whatever first. You would probably have to phase those in. You could overlap them some, but getting all of it done all at once would be really, really difficult to do, unless you just willing to write a big check, quite frankly.
If I could kind of address that, because that's a great segue, Byron. So that's part of the reason why Jackie's here as well. Thank you for being here tonight, Jackie. Appreciate that. So, they've obviously, one commissioner is familiar with this project, one council member is familiar with this project, but again, she hasn't carried it to commissioner's court yet because of this meeting right here. They need to make sure that our Parks Board and then ultimately our City Council is okay with the concept of a joint venture first,
Right.
Or because I don't think, without speaking for y'all, I don't think it's going to be solely a county park. So the real question is, would y'all be okay with that? Do you like that idea of pretend like it's 2 and 2? And I don't know that, but if it's 2 million in grants and 2 million from the county, 2 from the city, I have no earthly idea. They could take it to the commissioner's court and they say, nah, we're not interested. It's in the city limits. It should be their park. They could say that. We don't know, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but y'all wanted to get sort of a, yes, we like this idea, because if we're not doing all of these components and it's a $2 million project, well, then that's different. You need to know that, right?
We just want to know how much effort to put into pushing this through and get a feel for what the city has in mind and what their temperature is on it.
Perfect. So I guess what we're looking for from the staff level is, moving to council, do you want to, or would you like to entertain the idea of a joint venture, county, city park? And then do you like these components for now? I mean, obviously, we're going to have to come back just like we did with the City Hall Park and go through the design elements. This is just, do we want these, I'm making up a number, 10 things, so to speak. Is this what we want to do with this park?
Yeah, I would agree.
I think,
Absolutely.
again, our duty is to meet the demand, and it's happening. We're already past the demand.
Yeah.
Valencia is coming, it's expanding more, Del Bello Lakes. The need of the residents demands that we do something like this with this property. I mean, it's going to be, if you could put this to a vote, I think you would get every citizen in the city of Manvel would vote yes.
Right.
No matter
and
what we do with it. I feel like, and that's what we're here for, is to try to predict and project what needs to be done here in the city.
There's not that many parks in Brazoria County either. I mean, that's the point. I mean,
Well,
we're
northern
growing
Missouri County.
fast, we're going that way, and this is a great idea. And I know Dolores is the one that started all of this years ago. She's been working hard, and I think we ought to really, really appreciate that, Dolores, what you've done.
That
The
did
city, because
factor
I
into the
worked with
naming of
her
it.
years ago about doing some of these things. So let's absolutely move on with this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all conceptual now, but what the collaboration with the county and us, we can make it happen. Really do, yeah.
I think we should get
Absolutely.
that vote and
If I could address, you asked about the number of parks. Currently, right now, in Brazoria County, the county manages 11 parks and about 14 miles of public beach. The only 2 parks that are in what I would put in the central to northern part would be Camp Mohawk County Park there, outside of Alvin, and then Resoff Park up in Alvin. Those are the 2 park properties that are in this neck of the woods.
perfect for you guys to have one over here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To work with us and have one over here. It sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
I got a question. I love the project. I love all the elements, but are there any potential drawbacks to a city-county partnership?
I suppose that there are. If right now, if this park were live today, candidly, we don't have the staff. We don't have the expertise on staff. We don't have the budget. There are so many things that we don't to run the thing. So, Brian and I have just conceptually talked of, what if they help out? Because it's what do we decide, between 2 and 4 full-time people by the time it's all said and done.
Every bit of it.
Yeah. So maybe it starts out where they have more day-to-day operations until such a time where they can, for lack of a better term, train our staff, or, we start sort of migrating this over to where the city takes over in X number of years, So that one pitfall is, I suppose, if the city was unhappy with the way that the county was maintaining it, we wouldn't have as much control. It's pretty unrealistic. I mean, if you've been to any of their parks, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a pitfall, I suppose. That was a question. What are potential pitfalls? If it's the only thing that I did ask Commissioner Cade was, honestly, I mean, me personally, I don't mind if it's called a Brazoria County / City of Manvel Park, or City of Manvel / Brazoria County Park, as long as Dolores Martin's name is on it, and actually Ryan said the same thing. We were all good with that, so that's the main thing. But I don't think, unless I'm wrong, I don't think anyone was looking for, it wasn't an ego thing, so that's good. Nobody's, hey, we got to have our name at the top of the thing. It's truly, unless I'm imagining, it's truly a partnership, which is really exciting.
I think you'd have to have it clearly outlined, if I might humbly suggest. Shared management is a little awkward. You'd have to have it outlined of how it would be managed, and it's been my experience, take it for what it's worth, that one entity would have the management oversight. Doesn't mean that part of the funding wouldn't come from the other one, or that an initial, stipend of money, whatever, but as far as day in and day out oversight of it, I think it has to be clear who does it. Otherwise, everybody's going to be doing this at the other one. And, I would suggest that the day-to-day management would be clearly defined as one entity.
And you all have experience, and y'all can hire the staff. I believe Brazoria County would be a great partner, and let them run it, and maybe at a certain time, that's all in the weeds and the details, that we can turn it over, or vice versa. But I know, I love your parks, and they do have a lot of experience where we don't, and they know how to handle the situations that come up out there. So,
We have 61 park employees.
I think we would be crazy not to partner with you guys.
yeah, and have you guys manage it.
I got a question. Dan, in some discussions I remember having, we talked about surface water. You talked about that being the spot for the surface water. Would that affect that?
It could. So any design, and Brian and I have talked about this too, we really want to try and minimize. So far, no runoff goes into this pond. I mean, it is all aquifer fed. Even so much as Mustang Bayou doesn't even feed into its surface water. It's all aquifer fed. So that's, why it's so darn clear. It doesn't have a rainbow sheen on it. It doesn't have oil and gas and all the stuff dripping into it. So we want to maintain that so that if we ever can, like you said, convert it to just like a Lake Houston, where you're turning it into a surface water take point. So
You're talking about a water supply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a question in regards to management. Does that cost I'm assuming the city of Manvel will cover the cost if Brazoria County decides to take it, right, and manage it. We have some costs associated on our end. How does that impact the taxpayers, and how much of this would impact the taxpayers? I'm all for it, but I also think that, I think when we start talking numbers and, for every little thing that I've seen on Facebook and social media so far, that's been the biggest talk in this town is what is it doing to my taxes? And I think this is a great initiative, and it's a great partnership, but I also think we need to look at numbers too and see what that's going to cost the taxpayer and the residents here in the city.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it's going to cost something, of course, to maintain it. I would suspect, we'd have an interlocal agreement of some sort, an ILA that stipulates who's paying for what, and if there's a partnership where we help pay for, that's absolutely something we'll have to work through, no question, but we haven't broached into that yet.
Any additional discussion? So are we making like a motion for you all to explore this possible partnership, or?
Yeah, I guess what we are looking for a recommendation to City Council, because I mean, this was just perfect timing that that the Parks Board was back up and running, and we've got tremendous, a really strong group, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, y'all are all vested and invested and experienced in what we're talking about. So it's just perfect timing for y'all to be able to give good recommendation to City Council. Again, the two main things is, yes, we think this is still a project, and this is something we would recommend moving forward with. We think the participation with the county, the joint venture, along with grants, of course, is a good idea, and probably that we like, overall, we'd like to see it again before, we start construction or whatever, but the overall components of the facilities, we're good with that too. So those things.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we consideration and possible action to forward recommendation to City Council on the proposed Dolores Martin Park Facilities Plan.
I'll second it.
Vote on it.
All in favor? All opposed?
And we can work out the details of the other stuff later. I mean, at least now we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's on the table.
yeah.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me know if y'all want a tour of Hanson Park and show what we've done.
I think it'll be great.
Yeah.
I'd like a bass fishing tour.
Yeah.
I second that.
I'd rather have perch,
Spots, he's
but
already told me. I'm going right there where that feeds in.
Hey, how big was the bass? Any big ones?
Like I said, I didn't fish it very long. I think the biggest one was about 4 pounds.
Oh, that's good.
And this was, I'm trying to think of the time of the year, I think it was in the fall. So it wasn't even in the spring when they're bigger. But I think there's some decent fish in there. But I'm a bass fisherman, so I'm going to err on the side of telling you there's lots of big ones in there, But again, I'm just anecdotally looking at it. The habitat's good, the water looks good. Like I said, if you've got American pondweed, if you have a kind of an indicator species, that's a good one. It's native. It doesn't take over the lake. It's not like you're going to have to go in there and treat a bunch of invasive plants or anything right away. So it bodes well.
That's good.
And with some management,
This was closed off, right?
And I'm
So it's not
assuming-
being fed by any outside water, right?
I couldn't see it.
Okay.
I would wonder how high Mustang Bio gets, but it'd have to climb up. If it gets that high, then a lot of other stuff's in trouble too.
So
but-
we could actually put fish in there too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And there's ways to manage that too.
Mm-hmm.
You can, we,
Parks and Wildlife.
we actually
Yeah,
have
yeah.
we actually have a fish fence at one of ours because we have a property that has a lake right next to Chocolate Bio. And when it floods, the fish we stock swim out and the fish that you don't want swim in.
Yeah.
So we put a fish fence, a screened small mesh along the ravine where the bayou floods. So we hope that'll do that. Anyway, I can sit here and talk all day. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, moving on to the next agenda item, consideration and possible action to provide input to staff and to provide a positive recommendation of approval for the amendment of tree preservation and development landscaping related to requirements of the zoning ordinance.
So I'll take a lead on this one. Just wanted to get some time here to discuss with y'all a proposed amendment to our zoning ordinance, which has development landscaping requirements. And the proposed amendment is to include a significant portion addressing tree preservation within the city of Manvel, and also making some changes to the development-related landscaping requirements that we have today. There's been a lot of interest within the community. We've had several council members who were interested in working on this and adding tree preservation requirement. And staff has also been doing some research to see how well we can integrate those requirements here. So as part of your packet, a draft version of the proposed amendment was included, and I'll quickly go through it, and then we can open it up for questions and discussion and providing us input. So one of the first things that you would notice is that we have to add a few definitions within the definitions portion of the zoning ordinance. It predominantly includes a few technical terminologies and some general definitions like what is a tree, what is a tree survey, what would be a tree preservation plan, what would be a protected tree, and what would be a non-protected tree. And then when we get into the sections within the ordinance, we start with including an intent and purpose statement, suggesting that it is important for City of Manvel to preserve large and beautiful trees to promote the image that we promote, and then include ecological reasoning, and then also including language that this is to establish permitting requirements whenever a tree is required to be removed. Then we get into a section that talks about requiring tree preservation within the city of Manvel, and also including specific exemptions that would apply for this ordinance. Like, for example, one of the exemptions that we've included is like individual lots or lots of records that are less than 20 acres in size and are existing single-family detached or attached dwellings. That's exempt. All the non-protected trees are exempt, and I'll get into what protected trees is in a minute. And there are a few other exemptions included, like if there has been a development project that's already approved and it's undergoing construction, they are exempt. And then we define, we can elaborate what protected trees would be. The top item is any tree with a diameter at breast height of 19 inches or circumference of 60 inches or more, and falls within a set of species, the oak species, pecan, magnolia, and elm. Those trees are protected. And then there's additional items, like if there is a tree that was required as part of development, that is protected. If there is existing trees that serves as a screening or buffer between residential and non-residential, that's protected. So it goes on with a few items on what protected trees are. Then we have clear statements that establish that clear cutting of a property for development, indiscriminate clearing of a property for development is prohibited, and prior to development, a tree survey must be submitted to make sure that there's no protected trees in there. Then we also established language required for permitting requirements. There's a list of items that we include that establishes that a permit is needed in a situation when a protected tree is required to be removed. And then we include 2 sections that talk about what you need to provide when you're considering removal of a tree. And we also include a section that talks about tree protection and preservation when you are preserving a tree on a construction site. Then we get into a section that gives specific criteria for tree removal. It gives guidance to staff on when a tree removal permit can be approved. And it's not like every tree, just the protected trees. And we include a clear statement that a tree that is not protected doesn't require a permit for removal. Then we get into 2 sections. One would be a tree replacement requirement and standards. That is basically for situation where if a tree is removed in violation, how do you replace it? And situations where you've preserved a tree and it's a development project and there are development requirements to include plant new trees. If you've preserved a significant amount of large trees, you get credits for that apply to your landscaping requirement, and you get a reduction on how many trees you plant. Now, the draft that was included in the packet did not get into a whole lot of details on the tree preservation credit. What we plan on doing is including allowance for basically like 2 categories. One would be if there's a development project that is preserving up to 3 or less number of trees, the credit you get is either 1 equivalent caliper size of tree or 5 2.5-inch caliper size. And the tree preservation credit would only apply to the large protected trees. It wouldn't apply to some of the other trees, which are the purpose of the preservation for which is to either achieve development-related goals or it's providing screening. So we've clarified that as a section, and then we get into the development landscaping requirement amendments. There are some changes that are being made to clear a few things up, like currently the development landscaping requirements requires planting of a tree in the right-of-way. We are taking that requirement off, and in fact, we are prohibiting planting it in the right-of-way, and the requirement is being replaced by planting it in the front yard or wherever the property has frontage on the street. And then we are making a little bit of change to the parking lot planting requirements. Currently, we require like 1 tree every 5 spaces. We are proposing to change that to 1 per 10 spaces. And then we are also including a criteria where if the trees in the yard if there is for some reason you're not able to plant along the frontage on the private property, then you increase your trees in the parking lot area. And the reason for reducing from 5 spaces to 10 spaces is to allow room for these trees to grow in the future, because 5 spaces is too close together. And not to mention, when these grow, they kind of block these buildings, and it may not help in a non-residential type situation. Then we've also included a section that, and we don't have this requirement currently, it's about providing a transitional buffer area between your residential and non-residential development. So when we have a commercial development that comes abutting a residential, we're requiring that a 10-feet area is left, and there's planting of trees required within that buffer area, 1 per 30 feet of boundary. And then the same we apply for large residential developments, where if it is abutting a property that is undeveloped and zoned commercial, we require that a landscape buffer is included outside of the residential lots, which is managed by the HOA. So this is like a quick overview of what we are trying to include in the ordinance. And if you all have any questions or any suggestions or input, we welcome that. And we would also like action from y'all to make a recommendation to the council with a positive recommendation. And one last thing that I would want to mention is the timeline. If we have an action from you at this meeting, and if you are recommending approval, we'll take that recommendation. Monday, we have a meeting with our Planning, Development, and Zoning Commission. We are hoping they also provide a positive recommendation. Then we take it to the council, the meeting after that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and then hopefully it gets, the ordinance has its first reading and then the second reading at the subsequent meeting. So that's the timeline on it. So with that, if you all have any questions or if you would like to discuss something, provide us feedback, input, this would be a great time for that.
Do you have you make any recommendations of types of trees that should be considered in here?
Yes, so for the purpose of the ordinance,
On page 6.
Okay.
so in terms of the size, we are focusing on the large trees that took like several years to get to that point, and we have a size requirement and we have a list of species. So the size requirement is like 19 inches diameter and or circumference of 60 inches. And then the list of species include oak tree, all variety of oak trees, pecan trees, magnolia, and elm trees. And that comes out of, when we looked around and these are the trees that we have mostly that are at that size and that age. So and if there's any additional species that you would like to see included, we can take that too.
Yeah, I was thinking about, since we're trying to develop more trees, is also consider giving them some ideas of some additional trees. For example, I'm an active birder, and there's trees out there that these are good trees, but there's some other trees out there that you might want to consider. Anyway, that's an idea, and I can give you some ideas about that. Okay. Just to add as an add-on list, because I have a bird sanctuary, and I've got a lot of Texas native trees that birds have seed trees and that kind of things that protect the birds on the migration. Right now we're in the middle of migration. Yesterday at my house I saw about 5 different species of migratory warblers, which is just beautiful birds, and so it's really enlighten people to protect those species, because they're really in being their environment is just dwindling anyway. So I'm going to give you some ideas, okay?
And actually, I'd like to piggyback on that. I would like to see pine trees on here at a certain diameter, because the hawks like the tall pine trees. I know they like pecan trees, but I have 3 nests in mine. So I would like to possibly put pine trees, large pine trees on there.
I was going to suggest that too, because
Yeah.
we're lucky we have some nice stands here. And there's one species of bird, a Mississippi kite, that only nests in pine trees. And I have them in my neighborhood, and it's like, it's magical. If you're not a bird, we're geeking out here. But I'm telling you what, that's the only place they nest. And we can do with a little bit of management, we can do a lot for these species. So I appreciate your including the pines as right on top of that.
In fact, we're losing a lot of pine trees. I had to cut one down because of the beaver. So we need to add more pine trees. That's really a good point. We really do.
Grow fast.
And those things, I've got one that's probably 100 foot tall, close to 100, well, not that tall, but 70, 80 foot long, tall. So the beautiful trees, yeah.
That's great input.
Mr. Abram, did you all get any feedback from any arborists when crafting this?
So our primary, the primary approach was we had like a lot of input from 3 council members who was sort of like a subcommittee leading the drafting of the ordinance. We did look at several other communities that have already adopted a tree preservation ordinance, and I took a lot of guidance from one of the previous cities that I worked at where they had a tree preservation ordinance, and we did have a lot of situations where we did, and that ordinance worked, basically, that's what I was going to say. So we took that approach, and there was an arborist that had reached out to us to kind of see if we are looking for a consulting arborist. But on this particular ordinance, I did have a conversation with the gentleman, and I sent a draft to him. So he did give us some good feedback. But right at this point, I mean, we do not have him on board as a consultant. So I mean, there was a lot of things that was reserved when we get to that. And one of the approach we are taking on this is we are taking like baby steps. I mean, this is the first time we are adopting something like this. We start and then we see if this needs to grow and if this needs to be kind of built upon with more expertise and all of that. So that's the approach we took. So to answer your question in a nutshell, a formal consulting, no, but we did have conversations with one arborist, and we did look at several ordinances that were put together by arborists and other professionals.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to add is in the last month, I know there's been an arborist consulted on issues that come up about trees. So the city is actively looking for guidance sometimes when a tree issue comes up, be it whether it needs to be cut, trimmed,
Yeah, good. because
anything like
For
that.
enforcement to take place, we have to have.
They're looking at it.
I can see some dust-ups with landowners, and you'll need to have someone,
Yeah, I kind of commend staff because they took it on their own to get that done.
yeah, that's good.
And I just want to emphasize one thing, like this tree preservation ordinance is not intended to preserve every single tree that's out there. Because as you know, I mean, development happens. There are property owners who would develop the property. We always want to make sure we have the right balance where we are preserving valuable trees. At the same time, the tree preservation efforts is not kind of having a negative impact on development or progress as we have a lot of growth happening in this area. We want to make sure there's that right balance. So that's the reason why the protected trees are defined in a very specific way, and it targets large trees that have character, that have taken such a long time to grow to get to this point. It adds to the character to the community, and also include a certain other types and species and sizes of trees which serve a purpose in terms of development and in terms of community building.
Yeah, and this on exemptions 2A, individual lots and lots of record that are less than 20 acres are exempt. That's a big chunk.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to focus on. That's a lot of exclusion right there.
So that was a suggestion that came about, and it's specifically tied to a single-family residential use. So if there is a property which is less than 20 acre that has an individual, that has a home, it's used residentially, then that property is exempt. And just to give you a little bit of background on that, there's a lot of restriction that state also puts in terms of tree preservation and requirements for tree mitigation and things of that sort on residential properties, individual residential properties. So that was one of the driving force for that exemption, because the state doesn't, and Bobby can also expand on this, there's a lot of restriction that state puts on cities on controlling tree preservation on individual residential owners. And we came about with the 20 acres because of our, like the nature that City of Manvel has in terms of like it being, we having a lot of rural area, estate lots, large acreage lots, where there would be trees that may have to be cut down due to whatever reasons, and most of the time, based on how we've seen in the past, we have a lot of responsible homeowners who appreciate tree and maintain them, and they cut it down only when it's needed. But I do get your point as well. There could be situations where it's not responsibly done. However, we do have that issue of state limiting us in terms of how much we can go in terms of, yeah.
That makes sense.
Didn't we
plus-
also talk, though, at the same time about if that property was sold to somebody who would change or seek to change the
Commercial.
variance to change it to commercial, then the exemption wouldn't apply.
Goes away, yeah.
Say that one more time?
If you own 20 acres and you decided to sell your property to somebody that wanted to make it commercial, then that exemption wouldn't apply to the new owner.
So they wouldn't be grandfathered in.
If they were to change from
Change the
residential to commercial.
residential to commercial.
Yeah, it wouldn't apply
Designation.
anymore.
Right.
Joe's, I'm not sure if this applies in this ordinance or not, but it does have to do a little bit with trees and power outages. Is there anything regarding planting trees or new trees under power lines? Just because down the road, that becomes a major issue with outages.
Right, and that was a common theme during the entire discussion that we've had, and we realized that right now we require trees to be planted in the right-of-way whenever there's a development, wherever you have frontage. So we took that out. So now on, if there's a new development and you have power lines in the right-of-way, the trees would be on the private side. It won't be on the right-of-way.
Be
Okay.
under the wire.
No more Vs.
No more
Yeah,
ruining
exactly.
trees
That's
to
Yeah,
cut for the
'cause
lines.
They get
Yeah.
scalped when they get too big and it
Yeah.
looks horrible.
It's
No more
ugly
new
bonsai.
Vs.
No more new Vs.
All right. Any additional discussion?
Good.
All right, can I get a motion on the recommendation of approval for the amendment of the tree preservation and development landscaping related requirements of the zoning ordinance?
With possible changes? Would that be?
With the input that was discussed, and we'll discuss that at both the meetings, and the final decision is with the council. However, we would make sure that, and just to make sure y'all are aware, the council members who were involved in sort of a subcommittee fashion, and even other council members that I've had conversations with, they were very particular that this was presented to the Parks Board before they finalize their decision. So that's why we had it on the previous meeting, but somehow we couldn't get quorum. So it's perfect timing. Monday, we'll discuss it with PD&G. So I just wanted you all to be aware that they were very particular that they had y'all's blessing on this. So we'll definitely share that input
So the motion is to move forward with the draft.
with the additional input provided.
Yes. Mhm.
Can I just say, I make a motion to do that? 'Cause that's a-
All in favor? All opposed?
Who seconded the motion, please?
I did.
Ellen,
Now, what is that we're voting on? You said that.
that, with everything we said. All of that. Bobby's out there anyway, so.
All right, can I get a motion for the next item of the agenda to approve the meeting minutes to date?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting,
I'll second
minutes to date, meeting minutes.
All in favor? All opposed? All right, that was the last item of the agenda. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Meeting adjourned.